Okay, we're back again for part 2, and in this part we are going to cover tooling and how I like to do it. I usually go through and I'll do one thing first, and then I'll turn around and do something else the next time, and the first thing that I usually like to start out with, now this did not case overnight. Normally I don't like to tool anything that's not properly cased, and by properly cased I mean you're putting the moisture in it and you're getting it good and moist and setting it up in a I put it in a plastic bag and let it set overnight, and that evens all the moisture out in the piece, and you're going to get much crisper impressions with that than you are just doing it like this, where you just put moisture in it and then you're coming back and doing it. I just put a little moisture on there. This is returned back to pretty much its natural color. That was just a real light touch I put over the top. But so I like to do this in stages. So if I'm beveling these stems, I'll bevel all of them, and then come back, and if I'm beveling around here, around these oak leaves, I'll do, or the acorns, I'll do all of those. And when I start doing my when I come in here to add the detail in at each stage of that, I'll go through and I'll do it on the whole belt all the way through. So I'm not, what that does is you're not going back and forth between tools, because going back and forth between tools takes a lot of time. So you can add a substantial amount of time to your project by, you know, just tooling this section and then moving over and tooling the other section. You can do it that way, and I've done it that way a lot, but for production tooling, it just doesn't work that way. So first thing we're going to do, let's start with, and it doesn't matter the order you really do it in, but I'm going to take a line beveler. This is a line beveler, and I'm going to create, there's a left and a right. So I'll just smash these marks in here and then hold it up, and hopefully you can see that. Don't know if you can or not, but these lines are running this way, these are running that way. And you of course want your lines running, there's a left and a right, and you want your lines running up towards the tip of the leaf. That's how I do it anyhow. So that's what we're going to go with. And start down here at the base. And I'm basically holding this straight up and down. And walking it down that stem. These impressions are pretty deep. And this is going to happen to every one of these. And there's different ways you can do this. There's no one set in stone way. And as you develop your own style and the way your brain works, your work's going to look a certain way, and that's probably going to be how it is. So there's a lot of people out there that I look up to, that I like looking at their work, and I can almost always recognize their work right off just from a photo. Kathy Flanagan's one of those people. Adam Tanner, who's an amazing Western floral carver. His work's that way. T-Pop. Lowell Harvey. All have very distinctive look to their work. It's kind of like the musician. The musicians that really have big careers, it seems like, especially in country music, are the ones that have a very distinctive voice and don't sound like everybody else. And I suppose that's the same in other genres. It is in rock and roll too. I listen to a lot of rock. I used to listen to a lot of country. I don't listen to as much anymore. They lost me there. But I still am a pretty big Chris Stapleton fan. And been listening to some Jelly Roll here lately. Boy, everyone's wanting to sing with him. Seems like he's got a pretty good story, you know. And he's very distinctive. I mean, you're not going to hear him and mistake him for someone else. And same with Chris Stapleton. Well, it's the same in the leather business. Certain people, the ones that are really good and get a lot of traction, are the ones that are individual and different from everybody else. And that style, the style that you develop, it takes a long time to develop that, years, and it's always evolving. But once you get so far in, then you don't have as many aha moments. That's why I called them when I first started. I'd have aha moments, and there was a lot of those. Aha, that's how you do that, right? And the further along you get, the fewer of those that you have. I mean, hopefully you never completely lose that, otherwise you'll stop learning. But okay, so we'll run down along that. I'll tell you what we're going to do next. We're going to do the edges. Now on this here, anywhere where it's sticking out over the edge, I like to use a little coarser beveling tool. And we're going to tool around those just like that. And there's not a lot of those, but there's some here. Some patterns it has more places where it sticks over this edge. And if you're not understanding how this is working, how this is laid over, then you will as we go along here. Okay, hopefully I'm in frame on that. And honestly, I'm not sure. Let me look at this viewfinder. Yeah, my hand's probably covering a lot of that. I'm not sure what exactly I can do about that, but if I can avoid picking my tool up, which I have a lot of problems with my hands, so I can't always do that, but I like a very crisp, very crisp. And I'm not afraid to go over a line twice. Some guys, especially production tooling, they will not go over a line twice. I'm not opposed to going over a line twice. If it needs it, I do it. If I get out of frame, I apologize. I just let's see here. I'm still new to this filming thing and I'm trying to figure it out. I was having some problems. I was filming some flint napping and my phone kept shutting off and just going kind of crazy and couldn't figure out what was happening. Well, I'm technology challenged a little bit, so couldn't find out. When you delete videos and pictures and stuff, then you have to go into your trash and delete that also. And I didn't know that. I just thought when you threw something away, you threw it away and it was gone, but that's not the case apparently. So, all right, we came around these. Now this here, I'm actually gonna change this up. I'm gonna come in here. If you can see that, I beveled that way. And then if I was dyeing this, which I don't believe this one is, this outside part, then I would, which I don't believe this is. When I started this, I thought it was. So we're going to do some more of these videos and it'll show all that process. We'll still do the dyeing and antiquing process on this video in part 3. But anyway, so the stain would come right up to this edge, come around here, and then it would go like this. And that dye, I'm getting off the subject here of tooling, but when you have a deep impression like this, it creates a little dam, and you can let that dye, it'll come in and it'll just hit that little dam and won't flow over onto your tooling. But we will cover that in part 3. So, all right, back to business at hand here. So this part is going to bevel in for this particular thing. Now I don't want a bunch of heavy marks, so I'm going to use a much smoother beveling tool. If you're not familiar with the beveling tools, that's what they look like right there. So it just has a bevel on there and it just gives that, pushes that leather in different directions. And I'm a little out of position because where the tripod and stuff is setting, and I'm not sure how much of this you can even see, but you can see what it's doing here. And I'm just walking that right on down. And we're going to do that all the way down and on both sides, so it's beveled like this. So I'm going to turn you off for a second. I'm going to do that part. There's no sense in setting through that. And then we'll move on. And this beveling tool is more or less straight up like this. when I'm doing this. So straight up and down like this for the most part. I will tilt it depending on what different situations, but that's something you just have to get used to over time. But for the most part, it's straight up and down. And if you're, let me show you this. If you're running a long, because we got to go this whole length, that's a lot of length, you know, 70 inches or so, 60 something inches. But if you can leave your tool down and just walk down it, and I'm going a little slower than I normally would, but that's much faster than pick, which is how I started doing it. And it just takes a lot longer to do that, and it's not quite as smooth. But if you're just cruising on down there like this, and it would be faster and easier to follow this line if this leather was properly cased. I can't emphasize how important proper casing is. It's just for this video, I can get by without doing it. It is better if I do it, but because I'm trying to shoot these videos and get other things going, I just don't have time to wait for that. And if you don't, you can add just some really light. That was very light. I mean, it changed the color of the top, but it put very, very little moisture in it. So you can add a little bit of moisture. You just don't want it soaking wet, obviously, because you won't get crisp impressions. But yeah, I'm going to turn this off, and then we'll come back after I get around the edge here, and it'll only take a few minutes. All right, so we have finished going along our edge here, and we're pretty much ready to start on the next stage, the next process we're going to do. And let's see, what do we want to do? So we got these little caps here. Hopefully you guys can see those well. I'm assuming you can. We have these caps. We didn't cut the little circle, and we are gonna just make this is just a little tool here. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. I don't know what this is. This is a Tandy tool, and I have a lot of Tandy tools, and I have Berry King, and I've got all kinds of different stuff. And I still use many of the Tandy tools just as much as I use any of the rest of it. So this is an A99, which I'm not even sure if that's on the catalog or not, but we'll go along and punch every one of these. Now some of these I'll do something, I could do something smaller or different, but we're just going to use this on this. And I don't always use the same thing every time. So then that process, so we did all of them, so they're done. And we will put these away for now. And we're going to do, I have another line beveler here. We may use that one, or we may use this one. But if you're going to do a lot of tooling, then I mean you're going to need all these different tools, especially doing figure carving and which is a whole nother set of tools, Western floral or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not known for my tooling. I do a lot of, I make a lot of belts and things like that, and I do a lot of tooled work. That makes up probably, it used to make up 100% of the work I do, but I've developed my product lines and stuff so that it's not so much of that, because I just don't have time to do that much of it. So anyways, where these acorns are, I like to use this line beveler like that, so it throws some lines. up that. Generally, I'm not going for a realistic look. That is not what I'm shooting for here. There's a couple guys out there doing that. Ed LeBaire comes to mind, and he's excellent at it. And I can do it also, just the same. But I personally, for myself, when I'm doing stuff like this, I want it to be a little, how would you explain it? Cartoony, I guess, a little bit. I think it actually looks better that way. Now, not that Ed's stuff don't look good, but usually when he's doing it, or and Ed's stuff is instantly recognizable. Peter Main is another one, and his stuff, when he's doing leaves and things like that, I mean, I've seen his. It looks like he took a picture of it, you know. But that's not my style. That's what makes all this work, is everyone has their own style, and depending on your style is the, you know, you'll attract customers to whatever style you have. And believe me, if you like something, there's plenty of other people out there that like the same thing. So you may have a completely different style and not care too much for my style, or wouldn't be one of my customers, and that's fine, because I have plenty of customers that do like my style. And you know, you may have customers that don't like my stuff, and I'll have customers that don't like yours, and that's fine. We can just all appreciate each other's work, and the artistic whatever that goes into that. Okay, anyway, so we got I'm just jabbering on endlessly here, I don't like a video full of silence, and I usually don't have a problem running my mouth, so it's okay. So we added those little lines in there. We've got our oak leaves running, and let's see here. Let's take I think we're going to probably use this one, which this is a Tandy Pro tool, and it's V2784, and I believe this is the one that we're going to use. And we're going to go through to all these oak leaves. Actually, no, we're not going to do that yet. I take that back. We're going to pause on that, and we are going to go here. These are Gary King thumbprints, lined thumbprints. Now you can use smooth. I like the lines because I want something that's going to hold antique when I'm antiquing, so I like to use something with lines in it, or checkered, or whatever. Something that's going to be able to hold on to some antique paste is what I prefer. And so we're going to throw some of these in there, and they're going to be, so the big part, your foot right there, is going to be, they're going to be shooting this way, so they're going to be running these are going to be running with the direction the leaf is running. And when you do this, I like to be just a little ways away from the edge, and you can get them really close to the edge. And I like them to be deep. And we're going to run down this entire thing doing this, because the idea in this shop is production. To have a nice custom tool belt or whatever it is that I'm building. But I also have to be able to do it fast because I can't spend all day on a $300 belt. I got other things to do. So, and some people out there, you know, they do a belt like this, they might get 600. I've seen some guys that get 1200. That's not me. You know, a few $100, that seems to be about where my limit is at the moment. Although I haven't raised my prices since we all have been gotten run through the ringer here with inflation. Not going to go into talking about that, but everyone's feeling it. Okay. There we go. And there'll be a little bit more of that to do, but hopefully I didn't get off. I gotta really pay attention to staying in frame so that I'm not completely off where you can't see me. So I don't know, hopefully it's staying there. All right, so now we're going back to our Tandy tool here, and this is a veiner. That's what these are called, veiners. And it's V2784 is what this one is. This is one of their Pro Tools. I'm not even sure they still make it or not. Tandy seems to always be changing things. But we're going to make some exaggerated veins in these leaves. And I like them. I like these. They have the little, the little marks in there. And that really holds antique well, and it throws a little extra design in it. And I like the look of that. It's fast. Works good in a production shop. Sometimes I'll cut lines in them. Let's see. This is when I first started, so it's not very great tooling, but you can see where these lines are. You can cut those with a swivel knife if you don't have a veining tool like that. So just showing just some little veins coming off there. But like I said, we're going for a little bit of a cartoony kind of effect. I was thinking about it, and I'm actually not even sure. I think this belt's going to be all natural and antiqued. So basically on the finishing part, we're going to show the antiquing process, or my version of it. Other people do it the same way. Most of what I know is self-taught for the most part. I have taken a few leather classes, and even now I love one of my favorite instructors is Kathy Flanagan, and I've always been a fan of her work. She's a really nice person, and she's very good in instruction, and when you're in class with her, you can produce some pretty neat stuff. And I always say that I'm going to take that home and expand on that and really practice it and all that kind of stuff, and I never have the time. I've done some really neat stuff in her class. One of my favorites was an elephant that we carved and painted in her class, and I probably could, if I went through all my notes and everything else, I could probably duplicate it again. But it's been quite a while since I've done that. But it's always easier when you have an instructor there walking you through it, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. And if you ever get a chance to take any of her classes, don't turn it down. Jump on it. She's been all over the world teaching classes. She's a recipient of the Al Stolman Award, which is I guess about as high honor as you can get in leather work. I'll never be there, and you'll never really see too many production leather workers in that class. Some guys I think should be there. Adam Tanner deserves to be in the Al Stolman Hall of Fame for nothing else. I mean, besides his work is just absolutely phenomenal, crazy good. And you would think that he couldn't get any better, but he just gets better all the time, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. But okay, so what we got here, we got our edges. We're pretty much ready to start beveling things. I mean, we did our outside edges, border part of beveling, but we got to come in here and you got to bevel around every bit of this. And for doing that, I got two of them that are my favorites. Two bevelers that are my favorites to use. One's Barry King and one is a Tandy Pro Tool. And this one right here is Tandy Pro 2 beveler, and it's a B2043. I have no idea if they still make it. It's a fine checkered beveler, and it's not real wide, and it allows me to get into tight spots and do pretty crisp impressions. And when you're doing this, you have to be able to recognize which direction. When I first started, I had a hard time even knowing which direction things were supposed to be beveled in. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. If your mind's not working in that sort of, to see what is supposed to be laying over the top of something else. So like here, this acorn is kind of laying over this leaf. And you wouldn't want this leaf, you wouldn't want to bevel it this way, because then it's going to take away part of your little design and what you got going on with your acorn there, right? So you don't want that. And this can a little bit awkward here of where I got everything set up, like I said, because of the tripod. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but this bevel is pretty deep, and that's exactly how I want it. It's deep. And I've just gotten in the habit of doing that because when I'm tooling, it's two parts. So I'm beveling this, and I'm also creating a dam for my die, so that when this is got this heavy, deep, I mean that is pretty deep, it creates a dam there, right? And then this is going to be backgrounded with we'll use a bar grounder to background this. And when you dip I use Phoebe's dyes, and it's super thin, right? Water thin, and kind of like it's the consistency of water or rubbing alcohol or something like that. Anyways, and you dip your brush in there, I want that to flow out, and I want it to stop at my dam, which is, so it's the tooling, the depth of this tooling is twofold. Now, this particular one isn't going to have dye like that, I don't believe, but I will do some that has dye like that, and we'll go over all that. This one's just going to be natural and antique. And I'm not going to make you sit through every bit of this, obviously, because it will take a little bit. Now when I'm warmed up and just cruising, a belt like this is only a 32-inch belt, and it don't take much time to tool it, believe it or not. You can work around it pretty fast. When you're not worried about a camera and not sticking your big head in the way of the camera and staying in frame and all that, and you can turn the workpiece the way that you want it. So I'll go down this belt and I'll get everything that I can get from this position without turning the belt. And then, well, you always forget something, but so you do have to go back and forth a little bit, but anyways, so get everything I can get from this side, then flip the belt and do everything I can get from the other side. And like I said, I always forget stuff and have to flip it again, but the less you have to do that, the more productive you're going to be when you're trying to do production work. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this here in a second, and we're going to do the other side. I'm trying to take us along far enough here that we can get a good section to go through the rest of the stages on of the tooling so that you can see all that. So you can see you got this little sticker sticking out from underneath this leaf. So I'm not going to go quite as deep with that. I mean, I'm not going to hammer it down because I want it to look like it's coming out from underneath that. So you do have to pay attention to what direction you're beveling things. You can really make something look terrible if you're beveling it the wrong direction, and it happens. Heck, I still do it today sometimes. Get sidetracked with something and going along and just completely bevel something the wrong direction. Then you got to kind of try to make up for it if you can. And I'm just trying to walk that beveler around each one of these things. It's just that simple. Although it does take practice. You're not going to pick this up and just do it instantly. That's not going to happen. Again, my tool is pretty much straight up and down. Now, I've seen some people not do any beveling and just background it. And that works. I don't think you get quite as clean an edge, or at least I don't, so that's not something that I do. And I'm trying to create the dam effect that we talked about. And this would be cleaner if here's a place that we forgot right here. And you notice when I come around, this cap is laying over the top of this, so you don't want to beat it down in there real heavy. You just want it to make it look like it's have the appearance of laying over the top without beating it to death. So but you should be able to see here how going in different stages and doing everything in that stage, not going back and forth, tool to tool to tool to tool, will help. Just the time you spend, if you had a pile of tools sitting here and you're doing one part and then you're doing another part on each and every leaf, then you're picking that tool up, you're looking for that tool, you're picking it up every time, and it's just not very productive. So essentially, unless someone's contracting you by the hour, you're getting paid piecework here. So the job's going to pay the same whether or not it takes you 2 hours to build the project or 3 days. So anyhow, and something else I like to do, it's a piece of canvas. It's not a real piece of coarse canvas. I like to rub that piece like that, and that will just kind of smooth things out a little bit. And there's a few places missed here and there. We'll get them. Let's see here. Come in here and kind of round off a few things. And you can spend as much time doing this as you want. And also bevel some things that you missed. But that's basically the setup for this section here. And we're gonna do some backgrounding. And we're gonna do some down and dirty backgrounding with this tool right here. And basically what you do is you set that tool in there, smack it. Not super hard, but what it does is it creates these little bitty things there that look pretty good when they're done. Some people will take the time to make each and every one of those line up perfect. You're not going to get that here. I mean, if a customer wanted to pay me to do the bar grounding and have it perfectly lined up and parallel, then that's fine. But you're hardly going to see that at all when the antiquing and stuff goes on. And I like the bar grounder. I've had guys tell me, "No, you're no good if you use a bar grounder, and you should use different kind of back grounding." And I do, but bar grounder makes fairly short work of back grounding, and it looks good. And it's perfect for a production shot, which is why I'm sure the original guy, whoever come up with it, started using it, and why it's so popular in production saddle shops and things like that is because it is pretty fast. And this isn't the biggest one. I have some that's bigger, and these come in different diameters. I'm not sure which diameter this is. This is a craft tool one. I've got some Berry Kings, and I like them fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but the impressions are a little bit different size than what I wanted. So I don't really use them. They just sit there. But they are good, high quality tools. And tools is something else. So the craft tools today are pretty much junk. They're all made in China. If you get one that makes a good impression, you're lucky. You find some of the older ones, then they're good tools. Or even, 15 years ago they were better. 10 years ago they were better. A little bit. 15 years ago, definitely, they were better. But that stuff is just, comes out of China, and they're just pretty much don't make a very good impression. Let's just put it that way. But Berry King, not endorsing one tool over another, but if you want high quality tools at a reasonable price, which they're going to be anywhere from $30 to $50 a piece for each one of these. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's hundreds of stamps there. So it's something you have to buy over time, but for the quality that you get, it's hard to beat Berry King. There's some other custom tool makers out there. Some of them are $80, $90 a piece for these stamps, and in my personal opinion, you're better off buying different leathers to keep in your shop to develop new product lines and things like that. So I'll tell you, when I got started, when I got started was about the same time. Shortly after that, there was a huge resurgence into leather working. Part of that was to do with the internet and Facebook and all the different groups and all that kind of stuff. But I got in at the beginning of that, and I watched different people, and each their own. Some of them are just hobbyists, and they want. You want what you want. If you want to spend all that money on those tools like that, $90 a piece for a stamp, and go right on ahead. But I couldn't see it when I was doing. I just could not see spending that kind of money on a stamp when I could get something that does the same job for $50. I've never cared about being the cool kid, so don't care about any of that. And I put my money, my extra money, into this. Is how I looked at it, anyways. I put my extra money into leather, lots of leather, bunches of different kinds, and in developing product lines around those leathers. So that's where I spent my extra money on, rather than buying $90 a piece stamping tools. And it paid off for me. At least I feel like it did. Enabled me to develop a whole lot of different product lines and things that I've sold gazillions of. I don't sell a lot of any one single thing, but I do sell I sell some of a lot of different things. So I guess is the best way to put it, or how I've put it to other people. So we're going to make some decorative cuts here, although I just keep forgetting to do stuff. And then I'll check the time. We may end the tooling portion with that, because you've got to see, this is just going to repeat all the way down. And when I do these, like I said, the more cartoony they are, the better. And I'm not an expert with a swivel knife, but I can get her done. So, like the end of my acorns, I like to make a little, I like to give it a little curve. You know what I mean? I'm asking you questions like you can answer it. I did that on a flint napping video the other day too. So rather than just being a straight line, put a little curve to it. And then when I do my caps, let's see, we're going to come in here and we're not going to be drawing a bunch or cutting a bunch of lines in this, because we've already got this veining tool that we use to make those veins. But you'll see this in a lot of my oak leaf stuff. Not everyone does it, but just little stickers going down the stems of my oak leaves. Like I said, that's just my style. You want to develop your own style. If you want to have success beyond a hobbyist in the leather business, you have to develop your own style. I can't I'm going brain dead here. Express that enough. So instead of just coming here and making straight lines, we're putting some curves on the top of this, making it a little curvy. And those aren't real deep. So these are your lines on your cap. And those are going to hold some antique, and they're going to look great when they're done. And you got to do the same thing to your little cap here, and they don't have to be all the way across. Something random is okay as well. Now there's not going to be a lot of this work in this particular project. There's not a bunch of stickers to put deco cuts in or any of that. So it's pretty limited on this particular design, but those deco cuts, they don't show up all that great now, but they will. Now, this is a sticker here. So these are little stems running up. Obviously, but we have these stickers right here. And what we're going to use on those is, now there's different tools you can use. There's one like this here, which is a lifter. Sometimes if I'm doing other stuff, not necessarily this belt, I'll come in here and I'll come here with a lifter, and that gives it, and I will do that on some of these. I'll push some of them up a little bit. That just gives it a little bit more 3D look. But let's get back to the stickers. So I'm not necessarily going to use that on that. This is another lifter here, right here, and this is another craft tool, and it's a B2060. And set this right here like this and tap it. And what that did is that put a hole in the end of that sticker. If you can see that, hopefully you can see that. So there's a little hole goes in there, and you can look inside that concavity, which gives it just a little more look to it, you know what I mean? So do that to all your stickers like that, and those work great. Do the same kind of thing. You use this big end when you're into the end of a log to make the end of the log look like it's hollow. You can do that on a lot of things. And then as far as this goes, I'm just gonna come in here, and these are really short. There's not a whole lot to do to them. You can add a few stickers, a few little deco cuts to that, just to, when that gets antiqued, it'll look good. And not a big fan of a lot of smooth leather. The less the better. Now if this was a floral design, then we would use something like, I would use something like these Berry King tools like this, which would go in here and they would create a design there at the base, all the stems. We're not doing that. That's not part of this. I'll turn you off and I'll go through, tool the rest of this. It won't take very long. I can actually tool one of these in about an hour, something like that, hour and 20 minutes usually. But, normally when it's cased properly, I don't have to add any more moisture to it at all. I can go from one end to the other, unless it's a big belt that's 50 plus inches or something like that. Then that's different, but you can see where we're going with this. And I'll turn this off and I'll come back after I get to the end. Okay, we're back. The camera shut off, so I'll have to piece this on to the end of that. We're tooled out all the way to the end, and only thing left we're going to do is add a maker's mark. This isn't normally where I'd add my maker's mark. I don't like hitting this hard on this bench, but there's the video. I wanted to show you that little piece. Another little tip, since we're talking about tooling, that I'd like to add before we close this out and move on to the third part of this, which is the finishing. There may actually possibly be 4 parts. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, because we're going to maybe do the gluing the back piece on, and stitching it, and finishing the edges. So this may be multiple more parts, but this will conclude into part 2, the tooling part. And the other thing is your bench. So this is an old desk bench, desktop, and or desk, and I used it for years, and all the tapping over the years, it kind of started coming apart. So I put an 1/8 and an inch, 1 1/8 inch piece of chipboard on here. On top, I've also strengthened the legs, because when you're tooling, to get the best impressions, you don't want your bench vibrating around. You don't want that. The less vibration, the less movement you have in it, the cleaner, crisper your tooling impressions are going to be. So that's something to consider. If you're tooling on a plastic fold-out table, you're always going to have some problems. But that's the end of part 2. Y'all hit the like and subscribe button, please. That's greatly appreciated. If you got anything out of this, if you didn't, that's fine too. We're going to go on to the next one, so hit that like and subscribe button, and okay, we're back. The camera shut off, so I'll have to piece this on to the end of that. We're tooled out all the way to the end, and only thing left we're going to do is add a maker's mark. This isn't normally where I'd add my maker's mark. I don't like hitting this hard on this bench, but there's the video. I wanted to show you that little piece. Another little tip, since we're talking about tooling, that I'd like to add before we close this out and move on to the third part of this, which is the finishing. There There may actually possibly be 4 parts. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, because we're going to maybe do the gluing the back piece on, and stitching it, and finishing the edges. So this may be multiple more parts, but this will conclude into part 2, the tooling part. And the other thing is your bench. So this is an old desk bench, desktop, and or desk, and I used it for years, and all the tapping over the years, it kind of started coming apart. So I put an 1/8 and an inch, 1 1/8 inch piece of chipboard on here. On top, I've also strengthened the legs, because when you're tooling, to get the best impressions, you don't want your bench vibrating around. You don't want that. The less vibration, the less movement you have in it, the cleaner, crisper your tooling impressions are going to be. So that's something to consider. If you're tooling on a plastic fold-out table, you're always going to have some problems. But that's the end of part 2. Y'all hit the like and subscribe button, please. That's greatly appreciated. If you got anything out of this, if you didn't, that's fine too. We're going to go on to the next one, so hit that like and subscribe.